think that we're recording. It looks like it says record.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll kind of get started. We have an agenda, and I put this agenda together. Now today, one of the objectives today or agenda items is to have elections, chair, vice chair, and probably a secretary in case Mary's unavailable. The agenda can be prepared by the chair in the future, and I can help assist with that any way I can. I am a liaison for the city. I'm a non-voting member. So there's 5 people here, 5 voters. I do not vote on anything. So I put today's agenda. I don't have a problem running today's meeting. In the future, probably the meetings will be run by the chair. I can assist any way I can. So that's kind of the deal. So normally we would take roll call. I think we'll still do that, but maybe go around and just so we introductions. Whenever you want to share your name. This is Mary. She's our secretary. She'll take minutes. So it's really important for you to tell her name so she can do the minutes. So you want to start out, Kelly,
Sure.
and who you are?
My name is Kelly Greavy. What else? What do you want to know?
Whatever you want to share with the group.
I'm on the Parks Commission as well as the DDA, and I am the founder of Manistee Proud. You're next.
I'm Mary Kay Wilkes, and I was born and raised here in Manistee. And I'm pretty passionate about Manistee, and looking forward to working with all of you talented people on this committee. And I've had over 30 years of experience at West Shore Bank, and so I'm a vice president and also mortgage and consumer lender.
Jermaine Sullivan, City of Manistee Mayor Pro Tem, real estate agent for the last 13 years. That's about it.
I'm Lucas Richardson. I was actually born and raised in Brethren, but I moved here to Manistee. I work for Spicer Group, the city engineer. Again, I'm just like you, I'm passionate about where I live, so I'm glad to be a part of this group to, turn some things around and make the place that I'm gonna eventually raise a family, make it look nice. So I know I'm a little younger than probably most people that ran for this commission, but I want to do things right. So.
I'm John Mccracken. We've owned property in Manistee for going on 13 years. My background is I like school. I'm working on my 3rd master's degree. This one is in data analytics and computer science. My other masters are in engineering, and I have an MBA. About a year and a half ago, I got burned out on my job. I was a project engineer at Herman Miller in New Zealand, and left, and I began lifeguarding at the downtown YMCA. And after they asked me, about a year into it, they asked me to tread water holding a 10-pound brick over my head. I thought, no, I'm going to move on from that. But subsequently, I found out about the NRBC through our mayor, and it sounded like a great thing to do. My wife and I, who's president of Kendall College in Grand Rapids, plan on moving up to Manistee when her term is up. But in the interim, we've acquired more property, and I met Officer Shands, and we had torn down a very blighted home on 269 5th Street. And we love Manistee. We want to see it beautified, and I'm glad to be here with this team to help do that.
Sure, why not?
I'm Mary Dilworth. We moved to Manistee. We bought our house in the end of 2019, and then kind of all during COVID, we lived in Detroit at the time. We were able to work remote, and you sold us our house.
I thought you were familiar. I didn't want to say that though.
No, that's okay. So we kind of commuted back and forth all during COVID, and then my husband was able to continue his job remote permanently, so it enabled us to be able to move up here permanently in June of last year. So we are renovating a house, and we love it here, and we, again, like you guys are passionate already about seeing it kind of, you know, come back to life. And we recently, I was telling the chief, went to the historical museum and kind of learned all about our house and the guy who built it, and it's you know, we love it here, so we're real happy. And then I was able to get this nice job with the chief, and
We're happy to have you. Yeah. My name is Josh Glass. I'm the police chief. I've been here for just this summer will be 18 years. I live in town, my wife and kids. Grew up in Muskegon, went to school in Grand Rapids. Law enforcement and coaching. I coached high school football for 13 years. High school sports and football. Those are the two foundations of my knowledge. I start veering outside of that, and my use is pretty limited. Again, I live in town, pretty passionate about it. My job is liaison to just provide whatever information I can and to help this group. So I'm excited to get started. Again, I put the agenda together. I thought it was appropriate to actually go through the bylaws so we know the direction and the focus of the group. Are there any objections to just reading through the bylaws? They're pretty short and sweet. Does anyone want to read them, or would you like me to read them?
Go for it.
All right. Okay, Neighborhood Restoration Beautification Commission. Purpose. The purpose of the commission shall be to identify, research, and recommend opportunities and resources to help prevent, remediate, and eliminate blight and help beautify the city of Manistee. Membership. The commission shall have 5 members. 4 commission members shall be city residents or city property owners appointed by city council, and 1 member shall be a city council member appointed by mayor and confirmed by city council. At least 1 member should be representative from active local service club organizations, JCs, Lions Club, Habitat for Humanity. Resident or city property owners, members shall serve 3-year terms. The initial commission shall have staggered terms to prevent more than 2 members from expiring the same year. A city staff member designated by the city manager shall be the ex officio non-voting member of the commission. That's myself, obviously. Vacancies and unexpired terms shall be filled in the same manner as original appointments. Duties. The duties of the commission shall be to advise the city on identifying and implementing strategies directly related to the restoration and beautification of neighborhoods in the city of Manistee. B, to recommend appropriate activities, programs, policies, fees, and funding sources relevant to the restoration and beautification of neighborhoods in the city of Manistee. C, to report orally to city council at least once a year on the activities of the commission. D, to sponsor, arrange, recruit volunteers, manage, and execute a community service day at least once annually. E, to maintain a list of volunteers and active service groups in the area to facilitate volunteer efforts related to property cleanup, restoration in the city of Manistee. And F, the committee shall have no jurisdiction over city parks, which falls under the jurisdiction of the Parks Commission. Amendment of bylaws. If they choose to amend the bylaws, all amendments to the bylaws of the commission must be approved by a majority of the then serving members of the commission. Proposed changes or amendments must be presented to all members prior to the meeting at which the changes or amendments are to be considered. Before becoming effective, bylaw amendments must be approved by city council. Are there any questions on those? Again, I think that really gives us purpose, direction for all the actions and decisions here. I've also included our current blight ordinance, just so we understand from an ordinance perspective what there is. There's other ordinances that play into blight, junk vehicles, etc., but I wanted to at least provide this group with what our ordinance currently is on blight. Next in the agenda is elections. The election format is, I would entertain a motion to elect someone to a position. Then we would go around and vote yea or nay on that. I think the positions for this committee should be chair, vice chair, and secretary. It kind of mirrors the Parks Commission. The secretary duties will be in lieu of or in place in case Mary can't attend. The chair would run the meetings, vice chair would run the meetings in the absence of the chair. I don't see a need for any other positions, but it's open for discussion. Does anybody see?
Am I a voting member? I thought I was.
You are. No. I'm not voting, you're a voting member.
Okay.
There's no position for treasury. Money doesn't go in and out of this commission. So there's no need for a treasurer. Is there any other, this is kind of an open format. Is there a discussion on, should there be other positions or do we like the sounds of that?
That's fine.
Okay. With that, I'll see, are there any volunteers for chair? Does anybody volunteer to chair this board?
Are we just gonna look at Lucas till he takes it?
Well, I mean, it's an open, honest conversation. I shouldn't be the chair, obviously. But if someone wants to volunteer, they can.
If nobody's gonna do it, I
I'll
can
take secretary.
Secretary? Okay, so what I'll do is, I will entertain someone to make the motion that Lucas Richardson is the chair of the NRBC. Is there anyone interested in making that motion?
I'll make that motion.
So motion by, yep.
I'll second.
And I'll make a motion for, we have both.
We'll roll call.
Okay.
So roll call, just call each person's name, they're gonna say yay or nay, or,
Kelly Green,
Yes.
Mary Kay,
Yes.
Jermaine, Lucas.
Yes.
and-
Yes.
Thank you.
what about, I know there's discussion about secretary, what about a vice chair? Is there any interest in the group volunteering for vice chair that would fill in the duties of the chair in the absence of the chair? I know we have interest here for secretary. Does anyone take on vice chair at all?
I'm looking at you. Oh, yes, I'll do it. I'll do it.
So I would entertain a motion,
I'll make that motion.
okay, Luke, motion to appoint Jermaine Sullivan as vice chair. Is there a second to that motion?
Second the motion.
Second motion,
I'll come looking for you.
and we'll do a roll call.
Okay, Kelly Green, Mary Kay,
Yes.
Jermaine,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
and John.
Yes.
And forgive the formality, but this is the first time going through this process, so we gotta call the balls and strikes, and so it's a learning process for everyone. So I would entertain a motion to appoint John Mccracken as secretary.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay, Kelly Green,
Yes.
Mary Kay,
Yes.
Jermaine
Yes.
Sullivan, Lucas Richardson,
Yes.
and John Mccracken.
Yes.
All right. Boy, we're kind of scooting along pretty good. Mr. Chair, do you want me to continue this meeting and then pick up next month? So I can just,
Yeah.
okay.
Sounds good.
So next thing on the agenda is determine future meeting dates and times. And so this might probably require the most discussion when everyone's available.
So I would like to recommend that we do this after work hours, if that's possible, after 5 or 6, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult for me to make, especially during the summertime, while construction's going on.
I'm really flexible, so whatever, during the week is best for me.
After 6 would be great.
After 6?
Doesn't matter. I
Doesn't
can make it
matter.
work.
I'm good with everything but Tuesdays.
So we can't do it Tuesday at 7?
Well, I can, but
So name your day and time,
Yeah.
I think.
I think Mondays are good if people are good with Mondays. Seems like we can start off a week, and then if we have any requests from the police department or anything like that, then you guys will have the whole week before when we meet or whatever, so we're not meeting on midweek or something.
Okay.
this is once a month or once a week?
Well, that's the discussion, that's the decision of this group. It's not set. I don't think it's set. That's part of this discussion. I think part of the discussion is, does this group want to meet once a month, or is there a need during the summer hours to meet more often?
For the Parks Commission, we decided to meet every 2 weeks during the summer because that's when everything happens. We didn't feel like once a month was enough, but I'm good with whatever.
I would tend to agree with that just because we found that the snow covers up a lot. You can't see it. And now that the snow is melted, you can see it, so there's more to do. So I would every 2 weeks, and then we could ramp it up or ramp it down as required.
So there's no requirement from city council for,
I think it's, let me read the bylaws again. I don't remember reading, I thought it was at least once
But
a
at
month.
least once a month.
yeah, it's once, yeah, right. So I guess like as we get started or whatever, maybe every bi-weekly to kind of get some action out of the group
Stuff
and
going.
then start dispersing it.
Sounds
And are we
good to
doing
me.
7 o'clock then?
Yeah, I think that works, 7 o'clock on Mondays. So bi-weekly to start is what it sounds like is the consensus. I guess I should check my schedule to make sure. The first one.
So like May 9th?
I've got the only Franklin planner here, so I better look
Yeah.
that. A little old school that way, I guess.
Off on that Monday, so we might have to start
Do we need,
following.
do we need a backup day or anything, or?
I guess the 16th, does that work? That's 3 weeks out.
That's fine by me.
Everybody else?
Works for me.
Yep.
So the 16th at 7 o'clock.
Maybe we can figure out things to do between now and then as well.
So do we want to cycle that out? How long do we want to meet every 2 weeks?
I think we start it for maybe like 2-3 months to start with, and then we can kind of change that afterwards, unless you need a longer span.
I just mean for organizational, we're gonna make a motion to approve whatever dates we're gonna put together. I think we should probably get that accomplished today. So do we wanna meet, what is that? Is that the, I mean, are we looking to commit to the first and third Tuesday, Monday of the month? Does that work to keep it smoother, or does
Rather
not,
than
that not?
doing bi-weekly, you're saying?
That's almost bi-weekly, right? I mean, it's unusual today because we're a week ahead.
Well, we run into July 4th.
Is that what
so
it-
we'll have to change that.
If we start the 16th, we're gonna, it looks like in the month of July, it might be the 11th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Why don't we just do every 2 weeks for June and July and see what we get accomplished, or I'm sorry, May and June. And then at the June meeting, figure out if we wanna do once a month for July and August, if we have,
Okay, we can revisit it?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
So let's write those dates out, and we can approve that now and put that to bed, so to
So
speak.
May 16th and May 30th. And then June 13th and the 27th.
We need a motion for that?
Sorry, that was your job.
June 27th.
It's okay, Mr. Chair.
So I would entertain the following motion, that we meet Mondays, help me out again, let me go back. 16th, May 30th, June 13th, June 27th at 7 PM, City Council Chambers.
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Second.
Who's seconded that?
I did.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Kelly Ruby,
Yes.
Mary Kay,
Yes.
Jermaine,
Yes.
Lucas,
Yes.
John.
Yes.
And then the June 27th, we can figure out.
Yeah, on the agenda.
Just do a reevaluation of meetings, say where we at, do we need to continue, okay. Is there any discussion needed on that, our schedule, anything like that? So Mondays at 7 PM. Okay. That's pretty efficient here. So next, I want to go through and explain,
He's not used to efficiency apparently, police department.
let's see here. Man, try here. I'm gonna try, Luke's gonna try to log into GIS, and I already entered the password wrong, so it locked me out 15 minutes, but we're gonna try it here. I wanna go through and show you what the police do for enforcement, as we talked about. I have said,
I can log in too if you don't have it.
I just it's a matter of not fat fingering a thing here, so I'll get it here. So I've kind of said from the beginning that in order to really impact blight, my opinion is it needs to be addressed from different areas. Enforcement alone will not solve blight. So cops writing tickets by itself will not impact it. There's an economic aspect to it at some point. But I think it's very important to answer the question, well, what does the city do about enforcement? What does that look like? And I can talk a little bit about what it kind of looks like in court. You know what, I'd lie, Lucas, I'm gonna have you log in here, otherwise I'm just gonna lock myself out. Do you know the MPD user password, or just gonna use yours?
Not off the top of the head.
Are you know yours?
Well, not, it's gonna be Ed's, but. Oop, apparently I don't either.
I don't know what it's at. I don't know if it's so bad now. All right, so our city's broken up into 8 districts. Let me back up. Let me talk about the history of blight enforcement by the police department. In the past, I'd say post 2008, blight became an issue. City council addressed it with the city manager, who addressed it with the police department, and we had one officer working on blight. That's been a failed model. 3 years ago, we had 2 officers working on blight. That's also been a failed model, having 2 officers work part-time on blight. What we have found is with 2 officers, the neighborhoods don't get the prioritization that they feel they should. So one neighborhood, it might be a significant blight problem, but because there's so much other blight in other parts of the neighborhood, we'd never get over there because it doesn't. So what we've done is we broke up the city into 8 different districts, and we have all 8 police officers assigned to each district. And I can email this group after the meeting, the blight officers assigned to each district. Each officer goes to the district, prioritizes the issues within their district. I've encouraged them to reach out to council members. I've encouraged them to go door to door. I think they do a great job in that regard. And so each year we look to see what can we do to make blight to be more efficient from a police department standpoint. Well, this past off season, which is the winter time, we got with Spicer and asked them to put together a mapping system. Sometimes we're all human beings, and seeing is believing, and sometimes describing it to someone, there's some value in a map. Looking at a map and being able to extrapolate immediate information from a map is very important. I'm a visual person. I got to see it, right? So we created this software that allows our officers to document their enforcement efforts instead of using a Microsoft Excel sheet. But it also allows us, to a third party or a commission, a snapshot of what the blight issues are. And so if you look over here to the left, we have it categorized structure, minor, moderate, severe. These are residences, apartments. Rubbish, trash, tires, okay? Vehicles, junk vehicles, and then green is resolved. Now we're pretty early into the blight season, but we do have some resolved situations. And another thing that we did that adds, I think, tremendous value is we want to step in beyond and say, let's classify these homes so we can tell what types of homes they are. So we classify them with an outline of owner occupied, owner unoccupied, short-term rental, long-term rental, and then we have some unknowns. So, okay, what does that mean, Chief? So by looking at a map, you can almost immediately extrapolate information, let's say in this area right here. Okay, we have blighted structures, and 3 of the 4 in just this neighborhood are owner unoccupied. It gives you a visual of a potential issue in that neighborhood, right? Seeing's believing. So just allows us to show commissions, council, people, our officers to keep track of the different issues we have by colors and outlines. Does that make sense? Pretty easy. Again, looking at this area, you can look and see, okay, well I see all the blight, I see long-term rentals, and structure-wise, you can see it's owner unoccupied. So again, it tells us what classifications they are. If I click on a property, and Spicer did a great job with this, there's a plug. It allows our officers to say where we're at in the enforcement process. So in this one, I don't think we've gotten here yet, but it's the owner's information, it's the current blight classification. I think I clicked on the wrong property, actually. There we go. Long-term rental, structures moderate, district, owner information, and then the officer can enter notes, contact times, court dispositions. We have a lot of entries here you can see, or slots to enter. I'm going to tell you, throughout the summer, it's not unusual to have a property resolve blight, clean it up, and have more mess 5-6 times a year. It's just the reality of it. Trash, tires, whatever. What I've asked our officers to focus on is so we don't get spread really thin. Real quick, here's just some notes. Rolled carpet, it describes the issue. Observe the dumpster in the backyard. We'll check status clean next shift. I've asked our officers, as you can see, there are a lot of blight issues in some neighborhoods. Some are more blight than others. You zoom in, you can see more. I've asked our officers to focus on the top 5. Put your efforts in the top 5 in your district. Work on those, and then the next 5, the next 5. They still enforce what I call low-hanging fruit. You got a mattress in the yard, clean that up. You got tires, clean it up. The stuff that just takes effort. But when it comes to structures, those take a lot of time to get down. I've asked them to focus on the top 5 structures. So, this is the software we're using this year. When it comes to actual enforcement, we have two-step. Well, really 3. First, we always try to educate and talk to people. We've had a little philosophical change this year. My stance as police chief is we spent the last 2 years educating people, which we have. Officers have done a great job. This is year 3. If we've dealt with blight, the same person, same property the last 2 years, we're going to leave with a citation. I mean, the reasonableness is a finite thing. The first step is talk, educate, then issue a city ordinance citation. From there, they either pay it, don't pay it, or they ask for a court date. If they don't pay it, we ask for a court date, and we schedule a court date in district court. That's when George Saylor, our city attorney, gets involved. And we go to court, and basically the city pleads their case, and the judge makes a ruling. Understanding that the judge, yes, sir.
Can I ask a question? You just described 3 steps. What was the first one?
Make contact and educate them.
Contact and education.
Yeah.
1 step, so it's really 2 steps, okay.
Yeah, it's your house is blighted,
Education and enforcement.
Yeah. We always try to lead, and this is everything, or try to lead with education, public education first. But the reality is, if you have a blighted structure, and we've dealt with it the last 3 years, we're kind of past the education point.
Right.
And when we're talking about structures, it's important that, our standpoint is that if you have a significantly blighted structure that you're trying to rehab, our officers do a great job working with the person. If you provide us with a construction plan and we see you making progress, we don't write you a ticket. But we have to see you making progress. And it kind of goes back and forth last couple of years. There's been some court cases and things, but if you show us a plan, and you show us you're making effort to work towards it, the officers work with that individual.
What's the period of time between talking, educating, and
It's up to the individual officer. So if you have a $30,000 remodel you need on your house, we're not gonna give you 2 weeks, it's unreasonable, right? So it depends on what is needed and what the officer discussion with the individual and what their plan is. I'll tell you right now, we've had, some blight houses or structures that have gone on for 7 years in court. We're currently in court with 2 of them. Not private residences, but business structures that we, extension. Because I've been doing this, and I've lived here for 18 years, I can tell you right now, what I typically see is people buy these houses cheap as investment opportunities in a Lake Michigan community, sight unseen, and they get up here, and they start looking at what it takes to get this thing inhabitable, before you know it, they're in over their heads. And they traditionally just let it sit. Can't afford to fix it up, don't want to sell it, let it sit. And that's kind of what we've seen a lot with owner-occupied structures.
And so one of the biggest things that this commission is gonna do is try to find out ways to either help those people, right?
It's,
Or-
yes, it's any way we can, right? So we have people who get upside down on a house. We have some people who just can't afford it, right? And this is just me talking about experience. We have some people who can afford it and don't. Some that need, some that physically can't clean their yard or whatever. So there's a lot of different reasons why. And I lean on our officers to find out, okay, 123 Smith Street, there's tires in the backyard. What's the story there? Well, it's a 70-year-old lady and she can't, okay, what's the solution? Writing a ticket's not the solution. What we're looking for, I think, would be the value of this commission is to find something for those people who can't afford it, can't physically do it, those types of solutions. Because if you can't afford to put siding in your house, a police officer writing a ticket's not gonna help that situation out at all.
So for those individuals that can't do it,
Mhm.
they want to do it,
Mhm.
how do we identify those people, or are you going to get to that?
We can get to that. We can use the police as a way, because they talk to all these individuals.
Okay.
So if this commission ever gets to a point going, hey, we want to do a cleanup project, give us some candidates. I go to the police, say, hey, give us some candidates. And they, because they are assigned to each individual district, they can give us the information.
Okay. I might be jumping ahead, but will we be assigned areas or officers to work with, or is that up to us yet?
It's up to you guys. What do you want to do?
Okay.
As a police department, we're here willing to work with you any way we can.
Okay.
But again, my stance is I'm so happy we have this commission because, again, police writing tickets alone will not solve this. That is a failed model for 30 years. So anyways,
And the objective is not to punish all of these people either, it's to beautify. Manistee.
correct. In the business of solutions, like I say. So court process, we get into the court process, the judge makes the determination, and obviously we're bound by the determination. And I will tell you that a lot of the determinations we see are you either clean it up or the city cleans it up. Those are usually what you see. You demo your house or the city demos it. So those are usually the court rulings we get.
and who finances that?
Finances what?
How is it financed to demo or clean up?
There's a couple different paths, and I'll let George explain that, but I will say this, that the city manager and I have been working this year with George Taylor, the city attorney, and talking on paths for the city to recoup money. How do we, because we have to be able to fund that. Right now, the city would fund that, so if you have, for example, I don't know, you have a bunch of junk in your yard, and you don't clean it up, and the judge says, you clean it up, and the city does, and you say, I'm not doing it. The city would have to clean that up if they want to remedy that, and then find a way to charge you. A lot of times it goes on the property tax, or the lien on the house. But again, I'll let George get more into the nuances of that, but initially the city has to fund that. And this year, well, not this year, but last year, I imagine this year as well, the city council has actually approved money for demolition of residences, which I think is a precedence. As a result, we've tore down one house. We had an owner tear down their own house, and we're looking to tear down another house this summer, which is a house sustaining a lot of fire damage. So to answer your question, the city funds it initially. It's up to the city to develop strategies how to recoup those costs. Sometimes there is no recouping the cost. So
then they're put up for auction. Is that how that works?
If a house is determined, if it defaults on taxes, the city has an opportunity to buy the house. Traditionally, the city has not bought these houses, so it goes to the county. So what we've seen in the past is an interesting cycle where a house defaults on taxes, it's supposed to be demolished, city does not buy it, it goes to the county sells it. We're starting the cycle all over again. A lot of times we see the cycle where, for example, we had a house on 8th Street, and again, these are public meetings, so I'm always cautious about getting specific on addresses. But we've had a house on 8th Street, last summer it sold 3 times. One was Craigslist. And so that means the blight process starts over on each of those properties. So you can see some of the challenges we face. So anyways, that's a snapshot into what the enforcement looks like. Last year's stats, our patrol sergeants are in charge of this program, the enforcement program. Last year, 2020, we had 254 rubbish complaints, so 254 times our officers went out and addressed rubbish. We had 238 resolutions where they cleaned it up. Now, just so, again, what we talked about is, so 254 times junk, that's a lot. A lot of these are repeat offenders. A mattress in the yard, get rid of that, and tires in the yard the next week. And so, same thing with vehicles. We had 126 that we investigated. We were able to resolve 121. And then structures, where we have the most work to do here. So 147 blighted structures. Last year we were able to get resolutions on 88 of them. 26 citations issued. Our officers waived 18 of them. And there were 8 in court proceedings. Again, these numbers are from the end of last year. We've already had 3 or 4 in court this year already.
Can
So
you give an example of why a citation would be waived?
if they're compliant. So some people will not clean up anything unless you write them a ticket. So we found, again, we're in the business of solutions, that until we write that citation and you're staring that fine in the face, it motivates people who are, again, physically able to do it. They have to have the citation, and then if they clean it up, the officer waives it.
Can we back up to that 8th Street property you were just talking about? You said it sold 3 times and
Mhm.
it had blight.
Mhm.
Did they pay those tickets or were they just?
We never got to the point because we had to start over each time. We had to start
There
each.
should be something like on the property record that it's been blighted, like kind of like how we have those rental certificates.
Mhm.
Like when we sell a house, you know, we've got to make sure that they've got the rental certificates if it's a rental. Like that blight should be
Yeah.
on there somewhere.
That's-
So
That's a great question. Each time the contractor has provided Officer Hayner with a list of things they're gonna do, and they've actually started construction, and they get over their heads and they resell it. So we've never actually written tickets because they're doing what they're supposed to do.
So, but I think what she's saying is it should be put on the disclosed.
that they've
that
been
they
put on
need
the
to be-
blight.
I think it's a great comment. I will tell you, there are other communities, talking with Safe Built. It's the guy in Safe Built, works in Muskegon and some other places. They had an interesting ordinance in one of those communities where if you had a blighted home and it was deemed uninhabitable, in order to sell that home, the city has to approve the next buyer to approve it. And you have to show the city what you plan on doing with it, which I thought was a very unique idea. That would prevent something like that.
So right now.
To some degree.
Yeah.
Our ordinance doesn't have anything that involves that, so it automatically resets.
Right, people buy the house. It's great. I can buy a house for $20,000. You get there and you say, "Oh, I need, the house in the street." Prime example right now. People working are unlicensed contractors. They're trying to take shortcuts. So again, you get upside down and say, "Well, I can't. I'm going to get rid of this
So
thing."
how can we change that ordinance?
Well, you would create an act and ordinance. That helps address that issue. So that's relatively easy enough to do. There's an act and ordinance that allows a house, in order to be sold again, to be approved by the city, and you set the parameters of that. So I don't think that's that difficult to do that part.
Is Safe Built an inspection service employed by the city?
They're a contractor, yeah. They do building permit inspections and rental inspections. So.
I think there should be a way to to flag these houses, so.
I agree. And so I think the ordinance might be a good start to that.
There's also with the vacant houses that nobody's living in them, I know probably 5 of them just in my district that have mortgages on them. And I think you and I talked about it, that you signed that paper that you were gonna keep the house habitable as long as you have that mortgage. And there's 5 of them right now that are vacant in really, really bad shape that they're holding mortgages on. And there's a couple over by Morningsall, the ones that have been vacant for a long time. 2 of those people still have mortgages on.
So what does that look like? So you sign a bank note, says you're gonna keep it, what's the standard you're gonna keep it to?
You have to keep it livable, like
Livable?
habitable, yeah.
And who makes that,
Habitable, yeah.
and who would make that determination?
Well, if you can't pay.
What would the bank require? So Officer Smith's not
It
qualified.
needs to be, it can't be blighted, like the.
Okay.
The house next door to me, she had a mortgage on it and it was, they kept giving her blight tickets. Eventually, they deemed it needed to be torn down, so she had to pay the city to tear it down and pay off the mortgage. She had to pay the note, so she had to pay off the mortgage.
So what does that look like from an enforcement standpoint? The officer would contact the bank?
Yeah,
And how do we find out who who financed the house?
pull title.
How do police officers pull title?
BSA.com.
It's public record,
Yeah,
yeah.
you can just go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
But what I'm asking for, help me understand what mechanism, Google or how would we do that?
At the
So,
courthouse, register deeds.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, you can pull the title work and see who held that last mortgage. Some of them, I mean, it's been sold a couple times, but it should still be on there.
Yeah. So you can see these houses in these districts, it's a tremendous amount of work for a police officer for blight enforcement. I think that's a great idea. I know you and I talked and I think that's a unique way just to hold people accountable.
Because there's one that's gonna go into foreclosure, and if you blight them and they're on notice before it goes into foreclosure, it becomes the bank and the homeowner's problem before it becomes a city problem, and we have to pay to tear it down.
What would you recommend, if you're a police officer, would you write like an official letter to the bank to notify them?
Absolutely.
And so, what would the bank typically do?
Well, the bank's gonna call that note due in foreclosure already, but the bank's gonna be on notice that the house is blighted too, so
So they put pressure on the owner to fix?
I would think so.
I've never explored this, is why I'm asking. I
We're
mean,
gonna have an appraisal done.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we're gonna do. We'd have, if somebody contacted us, we'd have an appraisal done, and from there, it would just depend on what our collection department will do.
so it helps force some action by the homeowner. I mean,
Whether or not the bank would do something, I don't know. It just would depend on every different case.
okay.
And this is another data point. I was talking to the county treasurer here, and some properties qualify for funds through the land bank. And in their process, it's actually the treasurer herself that can go in and make a determination. That's the way that works. So it's just some other information.
I think we all have to do some research.
Is the treasurer-
Yeah.
When we get going.
I know when you and I talked about that, again, cops are cops. Our guys do a great job. But that's something outside of their skill set. They wouldn't know that unless I can walk them through that process. Again, if it's another tool to help motivate the owner, that's great. And that's what I'm hearing, is it could be something to look. But you can see how time consuming this can be. If you had 20 of those homes in your jurisdiction, it's very time consuming.
But all that doesn't really mean a whole lot until there's like an ordinance established, right?
Well-
Like even if we pull something, I mean, it's the same thing as waving a piece of paper in the homeowner's face, saying that they have.
Well, you don't
blight.
really need an ordinance if they have a mortgage, because they signed that paper at close.
It would be the same thing, Lucas. It's because it's a violation of our anti-blight ordinance, and we move forward, we would notify the bank of such. This house is violating this because of A, B, and C. We would have pictures at that point in a police report.
So it's more about attaching the fact that it is blight to the mortgage is the.
Notifying the bank so they can put, I don't know if put pressure is the right word, but help motivate the owners. What we talked about earlier was how do we stop these blighted homes from changing hands so many times? I think that could be. There's also a strategy in some communities about an ordinance prohibiting letting houses sit vacant for an extended period of time. And so I've discussed this with the city manager and the city attorney and Safe Built, and we've kind of tossed around ideas. Again, we're just trying to develop strategies, how to prevent these things from happening. So those conversations are taking place. But again, we're always looking at ways to be more efficient at how we do blight, more effective. At the end of the day, the police want results. We don't want to write a bunch of people tickets. You know, we want to be able to have results without having to do that. So, do we get everything we need from the, I think, again, we had 8 in process. Last year we had a house demolished. Again, this was using city funds. This house has been in this state for years. But we were able to get it demolished this year, or I should say in 21. This is a house, again, on Davis Street. The officer assigned to that area worked very closely with this owner to help motivate them, permits and whatnot, to get this demolished. In the future, this won't meet our expectations of demolitions. We actually have a city checklist of things that are required if you're going to demolish a property. The shortcut version is this: if you demolish property, it has to be in a state when you're done that can be built upon. So we can't have the bricks laying here. We have a long checklist. And again, our GIS mapping system. So that's kind of a snapshot of our enforcement. Enforcement for us really starts when the snow melts till when the snow comes again. Because we're not going to get a judge is going to say, somebody's going to go to court and say, my car is covered in snow. Judge is going to say, wait till spring, take care of it. So we found that out the hard way. So that's when our blight season, so to speak, occurs. In the off season the last 2 years, we huddle up and figure out how we can improve our enforcement efforts, which we've done for 2 years now. So I like the mapping system. I think it helps our officers. It helps show, explain to a third party what some of the issues are.
So that is available through the city's website, correct?
No, the actual software?
I've seen the blight map itself.
The map is, yeah, but the software is not.
Okay, the interactive part is not.
Yeah, but if you need a copy of a blight map, I can provide this group with a map showing districts and the officer assigned each district.
That's already online though, right?
It is, yep,
Yeah,
that part
no,
is.
I can look at
Okay.
it. But the interactive part is nice for, I guess,
Yeah.
our research.
What's nice, it's an enforcement tool, so the officers can take notes for court.
Right,
Really, that's what
right.
that's for.
How many out of the 8 districts are like, I'll wear my glasses when I'm trying to read that, just looking at it.
What's the,
Are like the worst, like how many out of the 8 are horrible, like 4 or 5?
so the most challenging areas are obviously District 6. In fact, I have District 6 split in half because there's so much blight. District 8. And then I would go to the north side, as they call it, which is District 1, as you can see. And then probably after that, probably District 5, just because of the sheer size. Those 3 that I mentioned are the top 3 blighted areas. And again, for size, 6 and 8 are the worst. And by worst, just to be clear, I mean most blighted. District 1, there's a lot of blight because it's a lot bigger.
So 1, 5, 6, and 8.
That seems to be accurate.
As you can see, some areas, like District 4, very little blight. Downtown is actually its own blight district, and that has very little blight, meaning the quantity. So yes, and I've divided 6.5 and 8.5. So again, you have really 2 officers assigned to each of those.
Well, I'm just thinking, like, what if each one of us took a district and worked with that officer?
That's kind of what I was thinking too, but looks like a couple of areas need more focus than others.
At least the primary districts that
Yeah.
have the most blight. Would that be easier, or would it be easier to funnel everything through you?
Whatever this group wants to do. There's no one that knows more about blight in their neighborhood than the officer, I can tell you that right now. So if this group wants to find out, well, listen, we want to do a cleanup project, what are some candidates in District 6? They can probably tell you that information.
Now, when you say our group wants to put a project together,
Mhm.
like a cleanup project, is that kind of like how Kelly and I do like our volunteer groups, Manistee Proud, or I'm on the Manistee Area Leadership Group doing the Big Day Surveyor. So, is it something like that, like a volunteer
That's
thing
what
that
it
we're
sounds like,
figuring out?
yeah, this is part of the bylaw, that's what it sounds like, that's how I understand it.
Yeah, okay, so it's not using, or not having the city budget for some sort of projects like that, it's specifically volunteer.
Well, I will say that
Or funding that we.
there is
research.
money budgeted for this group, provided the city council pass the budget as is. I would anticipate, and I'll know more after May, there has been some money built into my budget for this group. I think the amount is $2,500, I think is budgeted. But understand, that's not available until July 1.
Yeah, right, well, we got a lot of planning to do anyway.
$2,500.
More than zero does.
Okay. I thought you were gonna say
I was expecting
25,000,
zero.
like 2,500, I'm like, what?
Well, yeah, the fact that it's 2,500 is actually pretty substantial. It's uncommon to have a budgeted amount for that. So that could be, if this group is a cleanup, it could be anywhere from tools to t-shirts to whatever it might be, this group decides.
I
But
think
those aren't
there's
available
a
to
lot
July
of
1.
resources that we don't use either, because if there's houses, like, you got an elderly person or something that needs, like, they've got all kinds of stuff in their backyard, the churches and the school, like, if you go there and ask for help, they'll put together people to school when they're into it.
I agree. I think that'd be a great thing for this group to kind of manage.
We've got some great neighbors that would be willing to pitch in for those people that need help.
Well, and I know that kids at the school, like in the honor society, and my kid's not in it, but other groups, they always go around needing community service hours. So that would be perfect. Be like, hey, we need a group of 5 kids to come clean up this yard, and that's like 5 hours of community service or whatever.
Um,
That's like the Boy Scouts and Girl
Yeah.
Scouts, they just.
And you could, and if, just taking that example, if that ever came to fruition, you'd say this group, hey chief, we got like 5 volunteers, ask the officers what house that would fit, and we'd marry the two together. Okay, 123 Smith Street, lady lives there, she's MS, that's the candidate for this. That's how we marry those things together. I can see that happening that way.
I think it would be good if we all took a district of one of those
Okay.
in order to the office. I just think it would be easier.
And be willing to pitch into another district if they.
Yeah,
if they need
because then we don't have 4 people emailing the same officer on the same house, we
Yeah.
each have our own.
Okay.
Let me ask the group this, what does everybody think the worst type of blight is to our community? I mean, obviously we have the stats, but when you're just driving down the road, like what kind of made everybody want
The
to be a part of it?
I could describe the house I just tore down on 5th Street in District 6.
Garbage
It
in the
was,
cars.
Some of the things we found in
So
there
it's the
that
stuff in the yards,
Yes.
is what I
were
was.
scary.
Our house is dilapidated and.
Windows
needs
broken
some
out.
work.
Right at the end of the street, there's one with windows out. And then we all probably know about the ones at the end of 8th that's been flipped 3 times.
So it sounds like
Just they've got,
yard type stuff and the severe structures are
Mhm.
kind of the 2 big hitters. It's like if paint starts
since
to
you
go on, it's
brought
really not
up
bad.
that we do have a little bit of monetary resources here, it'd be nice to be able to identify ourselves. And I was thinking business cards or something like that. I don't know.
What scenario would you be giving out business cards?
Or identification cards rather than business cards, but I'm thinking, I've met Officer Shands once, while we were tearing down a property. But as we talk to people and try to get volunteers together. It'd be nice to have something a little professional to say, this is who I am and this is what we're trying to do. If you can help out, give us a call or and have an email address. That scenario.
Yeah, we can even drop it off to like our civic groups or write a letter or something to help support.
But yeah, I'd like to be able to identify myself outside of just walking up and cold calling, but yeah, to be able to drop off a card. Yeah, and in a scenario where like an elderly person, you give them a card, have them think about it. We want to help. Give us a call.
Sorry, go ahead.
We aren't actually going up to
That was
those
my question.
blighted.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah, I don't think you actually need to.
Yeah, I'm not, I can't do
I
that.
think the part of this commission is to try to identify things that we can help out the police department for, not us
Right.
actually doing the work. Right.
I was thinking about,
Well, alternative resources.
yeah,
So the police would be enforcement.
Right.
This would be identifying resources, whether it be volunteer groups, grants, programs, things like that. This group could say, we have this, do we have any people that would be a candidate for this?
yeah, I was thinking more along the lines of, just speaking freely there, of, approaching people like at the Elks Club, we're members of, we volunteer. People know me by face, but they don't know that I'm a commissioner here now. And it's a pretty powerful organization. They do lots of volunteer work. Then I talked about our neighbors as well. But it'd be nice to be able just to identify it ourselves, so some way or another.
Will you not be coming to this commission and saying this, this is an issue and we come up with a solution as to how to fix it? Or is it not gonna work that way?
What do you mean?
Well, instead of going to the house, you will actually be bringing the blighted,
What you need help with.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we have 300 of them. So I think it's better for this group to identify and create resources, and then we shift candidates to you versus me bringing you one. I
Well,
mean,
but that's what I meant.
unless this group feels differently, I can give you 30 houses right now that might qualify as that. So I think we're kind of feeling around here a little bit as far as what the direction of this commission is going to be.
Will you be present at all the meetings? I think that
Oh
was
yeah,
the
I'll
first
be here.
part of
I'll be here every meeting.
That was just a question.
Monday nights at 7, absolutely. If I'm not here, one of the sergeants will be here in my stead.
Okay.
But they'll have information to help connect the dots between police and whatever it is.
I was also thinking that, we probably need to share our contact information individually as well.
With
Our
the
phone
police-
numbers and our email addresses,
With
is
the
it,
police department or?
with each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to put together a contact tree, which, did you guys get this already or no? This was created by our okay, so let me share this document with you. It has your work information, your appointments, and your emails. This is the 2022 city directory. So it's on our city page, but I can share this with you
Oh,
as
I
well.
didn't know it was out there.
Yeah. The officers know who you are, but we'll share with each other.
Are we gonna,
So it's really, to answer your question, it's up to the commission what they want. Do you want me to bring you case by case, or do you want to identify solutions first and then bring people to that solution? It's up to what you guys want to do. What do you think makes the most impact, or?
So I guess just from hearing you give the spiel about Blight and Manistee, it sounds like the biggest issue that the police department is dealing with is volume, right?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. So I guess what would help like the police department from us the most, do you think?
I think by identifying resources, probably financial resources, in a volunteer group, that if somebody can't afford something, we have a solution. If someone can't physically do it, Or even if they just don't have time to do it, give a solution that way. That's my perspective.
Well, and wouldn't you know best who, I mean, we don't know that yet, so wouldn't it be best for you to bring those to us and we find a solution?
If you have the solution, yeah, I think so. There's no point in saying, we have to, this group is so new, we don't have any resources right now, right? We talked about a volunteer, we talked about the Elks, we talked about different solutions, but I think we really want to nail down on those before we bring something forward.
Well, what if we took like the first 5 that are really top, that are the worst?
Yeah.
And then focused on trying to figure out how to help these people.
Okay.
And once we did the 5, we did our next
I agree with
5.
that.
Because
Okay.
there's so many, we can't tackle all of them because we would not be very effective.
Mhm.
in my
What type of blight do you want?
Well, I guess maybe the worst.
Well, I think the worst is going to be owner unoccupied, and I don't know what solutions other than financial at this point, so probably,
Table so that we can figure out how we can support those.
It seems to me,
There's got to be
yeah.
something that we can do to put in place to say, you know, these have not been rented, this is what you really need to do in this time frame. I mean, I don't know, I'm just
Yeah.
throwing something out there.
I'm determined I like your initial idea is finding people who live there.
Yeah.
The big problem is when they don't live there and they live out of state or out of
Right.
town, who live there, who we think are financially or physically challenged, bring that to this commission to find
Right.
solutions for. I've got one right off the top of my head I can think, I mean, there's a lot. So I think we can bring, as a police department, that to you in short order,
Right.
based on their contact. So, we can do pictures, we can do addresses, we can do whatever you need.
I like that idea, because it sounds like the owner unoccupied, maybe owned by somebody out of state, there's other mechanisms in the works, and let's help out the people that really need it first.
Yeah, and for a majority of those owner unoccupied, John, I think we're gonna have to just knock the houses down. That's probably outside the scope of this group,
I
but,
feel like a lot of those situations are when the market's down, somebody buys something off of Zillow just because it's in a nice area up north or something, and then they never
a
even.
lot of us post 2008, yep. So we can, as a police department, get a list together based on what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing is, people we can impact who either financially can't do it or physically can't do it, prioritize those, bring them to this group and see if we can work in problem solving.
I think if we, I still think if we break off into districts, we'll know better, working with the officers, like, who needs what. You know what I mean?
Well,
Sure.
we could probably bring it back to the
Yeah.
table.
Yeah, instead of having constant, like, you could start, but like, once we break off into, sections, we'll know, you know, like, hey, I got this house that, you know, this lady can't get the stuff done, here's what we need.
Or what we could do is
Yeah.
have the chief bring those 5 to the table, we work with those 5 as a group. And then each one gets divided into their section, and then brings one from their section that we can all help with. Because we can't do a million at one time, it would just be too many. You know, I can't see that we're,
No, it's, yeah.
any, you know,
Yeah, what we do has to be efficient.
yeah,
So it's-
otherwise it's just gonna be too much. But I
But-
like the idea.
But the first 5 that need help could be from one district. So how is that going to affect, I mean, if we all take one district, if
We're not gonna all take one district. I mean, there's not enough here. There's some districts that,
I think, but we already said the 5 top,
Right.
the 5 top
Yeah,
ones,
take
so.
the 5.
how about we take the top 3, or top 4 blighted districts, and from that we create a list, the police department, of what we think qualifies people who financially or physically can't remedy their blight, and I bring them to this group and we work it.
Right.
However this group decides to work it.
yeah.
What are your thoughts?
My thought is that everybody's gonna say they can't financially do it.
Well, our officers make this, that's how we know to write tickets or not to write tickets. We know people. We know, we can determine it, yeah.
But then we would go to try to help with the church or something, if it's small enough, it's not a huge thing.
I think it'd
Try to
be
get it cleaned up.
a good idea to maybe brainstorm a list of resources, because I volunteered for
Mhm.
Habitat
Right.
for Humanity.
Right,
That's one.
yes.
And then our churches, somebody said schools, you know, I'm an Alex guy.
Yeah, I reached out to Habitat, they might not be a good still reach out, though. I talked to her who is, she used to work, I can't remember her name, she used to work for Michigan at some point. and-
Vanessa.
Is that what it is?
I've spoken.
Great resource to have, great person to talk to in this regard.
Very good.
And I don't, if she can't help, she might be able to point in a different direction.
Exactly,
Correct.
but just a list of,
Yeah.
and maybe, I don't know, maybe Habitat can't do that one, but maybe the local church can.
That's a great
There
idea.
might be some resources through rural development, they have kind of a different section, so rural development.
Yeah, and then there's, you know, I've spoken with our county treasurer about the land bank.
Right, it's another one, so.
Yeah, but just to have like a list of, you know, potential resources to help
I know
out.
that there's a group of veterans that go around helping, so that might even be a possibility, they're out of the Caliba area. And so that might be somebody that might want to help too.
United Way
Right.
has said they would help people, private resident owners fill out the rural development or grants, things like that.
Right.
So maybe we can get a list together of potential resources and work on that. What does this group think about that?
It's a great idea.
Yeah, that's like a takeaway for me. I'll go home and start, you know, making a bullet list, and maybe we all do. It's gonna be, everybody's probably gonna have Habitat on there, but at least we consolidate.
What does this group want to see from the police department next meeting, which will be on the 16th, so 3 weeks away, right? What is this group, just so I'm clear, what do you want to see from the police department? You want this list of homes? Okay.
3 to 5, and I'd like to know, again, I met Officer Shands, great guy, and what officer has what district?
3 to 5, you said 3 to 5,
Opportunities, I'll call them.
okay. Overall, just bring 3 to 5, or how many do you guys want?
I think,
I think that's plenty.
Small bite,
Maybe
first bite? Okay.
overwhelmed with that to begin with,
All right, okay.
because there'll be a lot going on.
and it would be nice to hear, it's somewhat on the website, but for these candidates that are coming in, what are the issues? You know, what are the challenges of, is it financial, physical, whatever, or a combination of things, and then just, you know, it's just more information for us to work with about these individual homes or properties
How would you like to get that accomplished?
by talking to the officer.
Okay.
Well, there's notes on the website. If it's all captured there, it's okay.
I would recommend we probably utilize that. I can't guarantee get those officers here for these blight meetings.
That's okay. I
But
mean, one way
those
or another.
notes, and then the candidates that we do have, I can make sure we have background on that.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah. Yep. I can think of just a great candidate right now on Davis Street that, you know, it's a financial situation. So that's what the police department will bring to the commission in May. What else needs to be done between now and then?
We're gonna make a
We
list.
get a list together,
Right.
okay? I will also, I'll put a list together of the people I think are point of contacts. Even if it's redundant, we can kind of X that out and red pen the list. And I would encourage this commission to reach out to people locally and say, hey, can you help out with this? I mean, I did 2 years ago, maybe.
So was it a silly idea to have identification cards? Or is that premature?
If somebody asks
I
you,
have so many cards that I can't.
Okay.
if you go out and tell somebody you're a
It's
city
a silly
council-
idea, that's okay.
They question you on that?
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things that who would claim to be that wasn't.
Yeah.
I would caution you about going in neighborhoods. I wouldn't want you to go door to door, but if you go to
I'm not gonna go door to door,
Yeah.
not until we get some experience with our officers and a couple of these, I'll just call them opportunities.
yeah.
Not yet.
And we're talking about Habitat for Humanity, 501c3s. Don't you think that we could ask the community, just like I did with my own Make Manistee Proud, you just get the word out there and people start signing up. I mean, I don't think it needs to be just Habitat for Humanity. I think there are community members that would help. So in getting a list.
I think you
of-
could probably put an announcement on our city
Right.
and Facebook going, hey, the NRBC is looking for looking for volunteers. We need a point of contact. Who's gonna be a point of contact of this group for them to contact and to manage and put together? What's that gonna look like? How are we gonna, getting it out there is the easy part, but how do we manage that?
Right.
So it sounds like that would be something that we would try to put together when we had the project set, right? Like
Right.
it-
Yeah.
I don't think it really makes too much sense to kind of get that group together before we have anything set, because the people are gonna wanna know what they're signing up for.
Right, I think if
Well,
we
it,
have
when
the
it
first
is.
3 to 5.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but it might be nice to get a roster together first, to get that roster together and say, okay, now we've got a roster, let's get a project. You hate to have a project, an opportunity be delayed because we can't find volunteers. It might, because again, guys, it's 4 months of blight season,
I
really.
think if you just put together a roster with like emails or whatever and send out an email and say, hey, I need 5 people for this project to clean up the yard, you could get 5 people. So people don't get burnt out because people doing the same thing over and over, they're just gonna, it'll dissolve and they will have nobody because it'll be the same people over and over.
So do you want to do a case by case, like he's saying, okay,
Yeah.
123 Smith Street, the city of Manistee and RBC is looking for volunteers to clean
Well,
up
no,
trash.
have
in
a
the yard.
roster, and we could just email them and be like, hey, we got
Make
this
a
project.
project.
Yeah, so we got this project, we've already got people established, to send out an email and say, hey, I need 5 to 8 people to help with this project we got going on, and then whoever, emails, we'll take them, so, and give them, the time, date, whatever, so people don't get burnt out, because people volunteer all the time, and if it's the same people all the time, they're like, ugh, I'm sick of this.
So the roster that we would be putting together is preliminary to, like, we have this giant list or whatever of people that we would contact when we have a project, so that way we're prepared for it. But there might be a little bit of work up front trying to see if those people are legitimate volunteers and stuff is what you're trying to say.
I think what we'll probably find out, for example, on Fifth Street where we tore down our property, a lot of the neighbors came out, and they're gonna, if we can get support from the people in the neighborhood, they're gonna be a lot more, inclined to help. On Fifth Street, they came out when we were taking the place down, and they were excited about it being taken down. They talked about how they used to have like community fire pits in somebody's backyard and stuff like that. And it sounds like that kind of fizzled out, but I know right away that our neighbors over there would be really happy to help out somewhere or another.
What do you guys think about having a waiver of liability? We have people sign.
Absolutely.
I'll work with the city manager, city attorney, put that together, just to indemnify us and protect, well, I didn't want you to tell that was this, or, whatever it might be. So I think it's important to make sure that while we're serving our community, we can protect ourselves a little bit.
Yes.
So to circle back a little bit, I want to be optimistic about it, but and realistic. I think a lot of the things that we're talking about for like a volunteer list to do a project all involves strictly the cleanup projects, right? So
It's gonna be, yeah.
me being like optimistic, I would think that a lot of these rubbish type things that maybe it's a elderly home, they're not gonna really take a ton of people, right? I mean, like some of them, if they're just some junk in the yard, 5 people, like you said, could probably deal with it in a day. It's not like we need a list of 1,000 people to deal with it. I mean, the projects will add up, but if we have 1 or 2 projects to start with and we get a good group of 5, 10 people, I feel like that can be pretty efficient.
I think it's pretty fair.
Are we going to be a working group ourselves?
I plan on being
Yeah,
my hands on
I
it.
would volunteer for it.
That'd be fun.
So it's really about trying to figure out the resources to deal with the severe blight.
Yeah, like the painting or the siding or a window.
With tear downs.
Yeah, I could give you an interesting example. So there's a house on 8th Street, which was west of 31, that has had siding that's been blighted for about 20 years. And it took a police officer working with 2 years, with an elderly woman there who just had no idea to hire a contractor during a pandemic, to find a contractor, to get them scheduled, and finally they replaced the siding last month, just recently. So that's some of the stuff is labor intensive. That's a heavy load for a police officer to work. And I don't want my officers recommending contractors, but you can just see how this group could be so valuable that it's hard for a police officer to working shifts, making phone calls, trying to look. We shouldn't be locating contractors. So a volunteer group say, hey, I'll make some phone calls on your behalf. Let's do this. Let's do this. What can we do to help that process? There's a lot of value there.
I don't know how far we're gonna get today, but that was one of my questions. And I've got some resources here that I wouldn't be shy to call them right away and say, hey, you know, once we get some funding through Habitat otherwise, but yeah, there's contractors out there that would be willing to help.
Yeah, and we've had conversations with the city manager of maybe having a list of pre-qualified
Yeah.
contractors, at least to do this stuff for the city. When the judge says, you clean up your yard, or the city has to. Well, the city doesn't have anybody that does that, so we have to contract that service out. So having a list would be easy there. And maybe that's a list we could, at some point, if they're pre-qualified, provide the citizens. So just conversations, you know. But just to be clear, and I love the optimism, but you know, this is a 30-year-old problem. We have to manage our expectations and bite by bite. It's not gonna, you know, when September, October comes around, the expectation is that all the houses are, no, but what have we done? We provided resources. So I always tell people to manage their expectations, but
Yeah, it's not, I think that's what I intended by asking that question, is what everybody thought the severe things were. It's the severe structures and the rubbish in the yards. So I think for the volunteer type projects and stuff, we can really focus on the rubbish in the yards part of it, but the severe structures, we need to figure out the resources and the funding and stuff that we can help out the police department and the city for. So I don't know if it's maybe it's two different lists that maybe the police department can get us, is like the top 5 yard blight, you know, type projects, and then maybe the top 5
Yeah.
severe structures.
The other ones that there are citations going on and that are a little deeper into the process, I wouldn't be thinking at this point, we could take those on, but the ones that, you know, the rubbish, the elderly or otherwise, you know, we could definitely help with that.
So you're saying to exclude the ones that are in process, right?
I'm saying I wouldn't go for those ones first, that I don't feel that it's maybe in somebody else's hands.
Yeah.
The cities and the.
Well,
police
if it's in
department.
process too, that's good. That's a
Right.
good thing, so.
But I was, you know, maybe for our next meeting, we can figure out what our expectations are for ourselves. If we knock out 5 this blight season, I don't know. And maybe we get that information from
yeah,
guys and.
I think it's a great perspective. You know, I said manage expectations. You know, we had 2 houses tore down last year. You go, well, that's 2 houses, chief, out of 300. That's more than we've had the last 12 years. So it's about taking steps forward. And what do we deem a success? How do we measure success? How does this group measure success? Is it we clean up 1 yard? You know, so I think those are important conversations to have along the way.
So we need some goals.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with the owner's blessing that we, you know, have before and afters, you know, and I think that would be cool. That would be motivating for a lot of people.
All right, so
Just
I will provide this group with the top 5 yard projects, top 5 structure projects. I will send out the map and the officer information as well as each other's information.
Yeah, great.
And then some type of document that has the meetings on it, just so you have something you can put out, put in your Outlook. Is there any other?
I don't think that those top 10, we got 5 and 5, I don't think that they should be non-owner occupied. Like, they can't be rentals, because the landlord needs to address those issues.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So these need to be
Like,
strictly.
it can't be a rental, it can't be, you know, somebody that just owns the house, that lives out of state, like, we're not gonna go and clean up somebody's house where the landlord hasn't been there in 5 years.
Otherwise, the solution is what? The landlord. It's their
Yeah,
responsibility.
the landlord needs to get
Yeah,
a ticket,
needs to
so.
get
We're getting rent money, right?
Yes, they're collecting rent, so yeah, it
So-
can't be a rental and it can't
Yeah.
be somebody that just owns a house that hasn't been here in 20
Right.
years, they just,
So, just to bring up an important enforcement point, so we've changed our philosophy a little bit. If there's junk, continuous junk, which a lot of rentals do, we're now citing the tenant and the landlord, or citing both
Absolutely.
persons.
Yes.
And we're classifying, land contracts as rentals as far as
Yes.
enforcement. So if it's not a land contract, both people are getting it. If it's structural, the landlord gets it, because we can't hold a tenant accountable for not having siding on the house. So that's an interesting point and great perspective, I think. I agree.
yeah, because otherwise we're just gonna waste our time fixing up houses for landlords that are collecting rent and not taking care of their properties, which coincides with the safe build inspections, like I've been saying forever. When they do their rental inspections, it kind of coincides with blight, like this property is, you know, got a ton of issues and yet you're still giving them a certificate.
Yeah.
And the police department met with that individual on the 18th. And we talked through some of the issues there, so that communication line's open.
Yeah, so that should clean up a lot of it, like.
Well,
when they get to
hope.
that- When they get to that section, when they're doing the rental certificates, yeah.
Well, it provides for two
Police department
consequences
gets that?
for landlords, the law enforcement and the safe build consequence, so I get it.
How does that information get back to the police department?
Which information?
Like if safe built deems something not livable or there's a problem, like and it involves blight, does that get?
And honestly, 90-some% of the time, we know about it before they do. I mean, we have officers sign it. So, but the communication lines are open. I've shared his contact information with the officers and vice versa, so,
So he should be contacting them if he's.
He should be.
following that.
yep. But he also has a lot of information that, you know, with the builders and what the process is, that's really valuable for us too. So, the key is open communication. I don't think
So
we,
are we gonna split this into sections or?
is that what you'd like to do?
Well, I mean, it just makes sense if you need resources and you've got an officer, I mean, why, it'd be kind of dumb for him to go to all 5 of us instead of one person that's, you know what I mean?
So
Can I-
as a secondary to gathering the 10 projects? you
I
said?
thought we were gonna bring projects to the group versus trying to split up and have individuals go with individual officers.
Okay,
That's what I thought, yeah.
okay.
I think that's a good way to start myself, what you just said.
Okay.
So we talked about putting together a list of approved contractors, and I'm sure that, so that's a bullet point I've got here. And I'm sure that your officers have boots on the ground, knowledge about some of these places, but at some point, I'm just gonna throw it out there, do we need to have proof of financial hardship? Because I know some people that got the money, they live in the house and it's not looking good. But
Potentially, I think if we get in a situation where we're
maybe
looking,
that's the next meeting or so.
I think if you're looking at something like grants and some type of financial stuff you do, but as far as if this, I don't know, does this group need to see that before they?
I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. If somebody, their siding is falling off the house and your officers would have more information about that probably, just by their involvement in the community. I'm just throwing that out.
It would be great if this commission could find a path to funding for that kind of scenario. It would really be a success if we could say, well, here's a grant available for exactly this. We could identify those things, because there's a pretty good population out there like that. I mean, like I've got a house on Davis Street, where there was a fire upstairs, and they're living there still. They can't afford to fix it up. They spent last year's tax money on a dumpster because they had pressure from the police department, so they're really, it's a land contract.
So that's like a catch-22 because they don't really own it.
Right.
So they can
So-
default on that.
Right.
So, but it would be, they don't have the means to fix it up. And so that would be something that we might bring forward and look at and say, yay or nay, or, oh, it's a land contract, so we'll go a different route, but, there is that population where people just can't afford it. And so what's the solution there? We can't do siding, we're not gonna, I wouldn't see this commission or volunteer group doing siding, because who pays for what?
Right,
What's the solution there? Is there Does someone identify a financial institution that provides grants? I think that would be great. What's out there? And I think it's important for this group to, we've got someone here from the police department, Spicer, you know, realty, bank, everything. So that's why this group is so important.
It seems like, at least for the first few, our officers would immediately know who we can help out as far as, I guess, the low-hanging fruit.
That's what I
Go for that.
I thought as well.
So, back to the Davis one, just because I need to bring it up. So there was a fire, it wasn't cleaned up and fixed properly.
Correct.
Was there no insurance money?
No insurance.
See, you can't have a land contract like that. You have to hold insurance, and then the person that actually is holding the land contract is the first payee, like the bank. So there again, why would we use resources for that when you're the homeowner and you don't have homeowner's insurance? So now it
There's
becomes
so many people
our
like
problem.
that.
But you can't hold a mortgage if you don't have homeowner's insurance. The person holding that land contract should be liable then to fix it.
I don't disagree.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that would be something that we wouldn't use resources on because you're not trying to do the right thing. You're holding a land contract and you're allowing them not to have homeowner's insurance.
Yeah, I think that's a good perspective. The key is holding that the land contractor, I'll call it,
Yeah.
accountable. And it's probably, there's a lot of houses by the same person that.
Yeah, it's the same thing that I tried to do with the rentals. Like, if you have a rental, you have to have homeowner's insurance because if it burns down, why are we responsible for it?
And so that's why your perspective is so important. Otherwise, from an enforcement standpoint, we wouldn't know that, right? We wouldn't know that. Same thing with the bank. We don't have that perspective.
So there's a root cause for everything, and we can help all the people that we want to help. But what is the root cause of why we have so many districts with blight? Should we talk about that? Should we try and fix that before we do anything else?
I hate to say it, but it seems like it's probably poverty, right?
You know, he said it earlier.
There's an economic, especially post 2008.
Yeah.
There's also other things. I don't think you can put your finger on one thing.
Yeah.
Also, drugs play into it. I'll be honest with you. Controlled substances in this community play a major role in that. That would be a monumental task to unfortunately try to find the source and fix that. It really would.
There were a lot of cheap houses around 2008, 2010, and they were getting flipped and flipped and flipped. You know, the Great Recession, when people started buying, and as you pointed out, you know, it's a Lake Michigan community, and people jump in, they think, great, I'm gonna have an Airbnb here. Next thing, they're way over their head. They can't find resources to fix up their place. They've got a nice home in Detroit.
But should we be allowing the same things to happen over and over again? You know, like, are we, like, what we were talking about in the very beginning? You know, I feel like we're allowing things to happen instead of fixing them. You know what I'm saying?
So it's kind of getting out in front of it and
Yeah.
trying to.
Right, I mean, we can put Band-Aids on it all.
Well, it's a
day
matter
long,
of
but-
knowing what you can and can't do, what authority you have. I mean, we talked about maybe passing, again, just understand that, you know, passing new city ordinance, I don't write it today and it gets passed tomorrow, but that might be a way that this group says, hey, we want to have a mechanism to stop this,
Right,
you know, again, there's no one solution here. It's the volunteer groups, it's the financial institutions, it's this, because there's no one problem. It's a number of things. This is not unique to Manistee, I will say that.
I understand that, but it seems like there's a lot of districts. You know, typically you go to a community and they have a district or two, but not this many districts.
Okay.
Just my opinion.
The theme, you know, if you look at it, again, this is why, you know, I'm not a smart person, so I'm a picture person. The theme on the east side, or Maxwell Town, if you're local, they call it, is significant structures. That's where you see the structures. You start going out west, so to speak, it's more some junk, but so, yeah. I agree, the junk in the yard, the structures will make it, you feel that, you really feel it.
Yep.
So, and there's some structures that our officers don't prioritize because they're just, no one sees them, they're on the back of a block. And so you sink hours and hours and hours into that one and no one will ever see it tore down. So that also plays into it. So anyways. Anything else? Anything else we want to discuss? Let me ask this group a question. Is there value in this group in taking a dial-a-ride bus to drive around the city and look at Blight? Do you see value in that? I can probably arrange that for our next meeting, unless this group wants to do it before then.
I'd like to do it beforehand.
Me too.
Let me reach out to the dial-a-ride and see what time frame they're on. I think I don't want to speak for, it might be minimal or no cost for the city, we'll see. But I think it has to be done before 5 o'clock, so let me do this. Let me get some details, send it out to this group and see what the consensus is.
And by seeing the blight, you say is you would kind of get like a good path.
We drive throughout the city and look at it. And
But just like in the route that takes us by, like.
yeah, I would guide the tour.
Okay. Just making sure it wasn't.
We're not gonna spend a lot of time on dudes driving. Yeah, it's not gonna be a canvas of the whole.
Just making sure.
But I think, again, a well-informed group is an effective group, and we need to,
Yeah.
see it. So what I'm hearing is, yes, that would be good. So I'll work on that. Is there anything else that we need to discuss today?
Maybe food for thought for the next meeting about roles and responsibilities for secretary.
Rules and responsibility for secretary are take minutes. And so she is going to take most, but her absence, then we'd ask you to.
I will try not to
Okay.
be absent.
It is literally only that.
Okay.
So, chair runs the meetings.
So is that something that you want me to put together in the agenda, or is that something?
You and I can coordinate that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can help you with that. And then vice chair,
Don't be late.
I left Chief Glass on.
vice chair, are you vice chair? Takes over the meetings in absence.
She'll be here, so.
Is there anything else to go to the order?
I was in New Orleans.
I'm just gonna make the comment that I'm very optimistic this group, especially with the conversations we had today. I wanna thank each and every one of you for the time you've donated. It's not an easy task. And so you guys are, unique in the fact that you're rolling your sleeves up, so let's go after it. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Real quick, is there anything that each of us should write down as like an action item?
Do you wanna go through a to-do list? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So my to-do list is, I'm gonna find the top 5, rubbish, non-contract, land contract, and top 5 structures, bring it to the group. I'm also gonna send out the information that I'd send out, kind of connect the dots for people in that regard. Also send out the future meeting dates and times. That's what I'm gonna do.
So
Have it ready.
We talked about each of us gathering or doing a little bit of research for resources, right?
Yeah, then we can consolidate the list.
Okay.
Do you wanna bring those lists to the next meeting and then we kind of red pen it back and forth?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, everybody just brainstorm on their own and we can get back to contact.
If anyone questions who you are, just have them call me.
Okay.
Yeah, they will all know me, but you have them call me and I can vouch for you.
Do you have business cards we can?
I do. I'll get you some.
And then
You want to give them out? You can go ahead.
the other thing we talked about was each of us maybe thinking of a couple goals of the commission, right?
Okay. How we measure success, right? We know we're successful with A, B, and C. Okay.
Is there anything else that was not overlapping? I know it's a whole others. No.
Anything else?
I'm gonna reach out to a couple of funding people that I know. Let's bring it back to you.
Kelly, anything?
Well, I think I have some resources in terms of contracting and volunteers as well.
Good. All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Look at that.
Thanks, guys.
Good, thank you.
Let's see if we did this.